chat at this moment in time, and the reason is we anticipate a lot of questions. We anticipate a lot of people showing up. I know that at our new meeting we had about 25 participants, and it was a flood of questions, which is great. And what we found is that that was a really good way to help us internally, especially me as your facilitator, to prioritize and to also time out the questions, because sometimes the questions were asked in advance, and that was great. We were just a little bit ahead. And so if you wouldn't mind asking questions in the chat, that would be great. Please note that this meeting will also be recorded. And so we just want everyone to be mindful of that. After this meeting is done, we will be posting both meetings on our webpage so that in the event that you asked a question or we were talking about a question in this meeting and you forgot what the answer was, we'll have that posted for you and we'll send you the web site after the meeting. If we don't have, because we will run out of time, if we don't get to your question, we want you to know that there will be additional opportunities for you to engage with us and vice versa. Andrea Williams, who is the lead in this transition, will be scheduling one-on-one times with each and every neighborhood association. In addition to that, I will be posting some emails, addresses, so that you can have a dialogue and regular correspondence with our Civic Life staff. And we will also be updating some FAQs that were already circulated to you. I know that they're going to be more expansive in nature as our conversation continues and unfolds. So I am showing 6:03, and I guess I'll get started. And so welcome everybody. I'm Daniel Macardo Jaimes. I'm with Civic Life, he, him pronouns. I am the public information officer most days, Monday through Friday, but today I'm going to be your facilitator. And in addition to that, I want to go over some of the things that are coming up in our agenda today. So I will be going over ground rules and meeting logistics. We will be doing staff introductions. And then Andrea Williams will take over. She's already received a number of questions as a part of our frequently asked questions. And so she'll go over each of those as it relates to insurance, as it relates to logistics, as it relates to new hires, et cetera. So she has a great presentation coming up. And then in addition to that, we ask that questions again be submitted through the Q&A function of Zoom. Again, here are the Zoom logistics. We're looking for your neighborhood name. If you're a member of the media, please identify yourself. Questions are in chat. The meeting is recorded. And if we don't get to your question today, please know that we are going to have additional opportunities for you to engage with us, whether it's through one-on-one time that Andrea will set up with each neighborhood association. It will be through email correspondence, and I'll have those emails up in a bit. In addition to that, we do anticipate and plan on having a regularly updated FAQ as the weeks progress. Ground rules. So one of the things that the reason why we're having people sort of identify which neighborhood you are from, this is a public meeting, and we are trying to prioritize those from the Southwest area. And so this is why we're asking you to identify yourself in the chat and or through your name. And so if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. Move up and move back. And what that means is that one person will speak at a time. Participants will be called on when it is their turn to speak. We will try to get all participants a turn or a chance to offer a question, and I will be tasked with facilitating that. And you'll see how I'll do that. As it relates to other ground rules, please use I statements. Speak to your feelings and experiences. Don't speak for others. We also want to say that it's okay to disagree. We want you to challenge ideas, but we don't want you to challenge people personally. So let's challenge ideas and not focus on people personally. We also ask that everyone respect each other. We all have different lived experiences and opinions. Practice active listening. We also want to underscore that if members are disruptive, they will be moved. What does disruptive mean? Just be careful of language, no profanity. So please be respectful. And also, we also want to end with, we all share responsibility for making this work, and we're all in this together. So again, we're looking forward to having you, and thank you all for being here. As it relates to introductions, I'm going to quickly go over this, and then we'll go over one at a time with my fellow colleagues that are on the phone. Andrea Williams is a partnership manager. She is the lead that Commissioner Hardesty had assigned to carry this transition effort over. We also have Shook on the call and Diane. Those are going to be some supporting contacts for the Southwest neighborhoods, and they will have the opportunity to speak and introduce themselves in their roles. But as it relates to other additional Civic Life support, you also get Daniel, who will not necessarily be your day-to-day contact by any means, but we have a communications team that will support you on the website related stuff as it relates to some just high-level communications needs. We also have members of the business operations teams. We have Polly Ann, who's here representing business operations. And then we also have Director Ree, who is also going to be an expanded sort of resource here for the team. And with that said, I will now identify the next speaker from Civic Life, and then I ask that, that the Civic Life speakers then call on somebody else to do their introduction. So Andrea, take it away.
Thanks, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Andrea Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the partnerships manager at the Office of Community and Civic Life. And you've probably seen my name a few times now, but I am your main point of contact during this transition period with services to Southwest neighbors. And I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Shook.
Good evening. My name is Shuk Arafjanov. He and his pronouns, sorry. And I work with District Coalition offices and diversity civic leadership group cohort organizations and various civic engagement projects, including agreement coordinations. So looking forward to meet all of you. Nice to be here. Thank you. And Diane?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Diane Riley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the supervisor for the the city-run District Coalition offices in East and North. And I'm excited to be here and to support this effort. Next up, let's hear from Polly Ann.
Hi, everybody. I'm Polly Ann Bird, she, her pronouns, and I am part of the business operations team supporting the Bureau. And I will call on Director Ree.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Suk Ree. I serve as Director for the Office of Community and Civic Life. We're very excited to be continuing our relationship with Southwest neighbors and neighborhood associations. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'll pass it to Perla. Is Perla joining?
Perla's not here, but we have Kristen Johnson from Commissioner Hardesty's office, and if Kristen wants to, I see that Kristen has appeared. Go for it, Kristen.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kristen Johnson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Commissioner Hardesty's financial policy advisor, and just here to listen and work with the team as well to make sure all your needs are met. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, Andrea, we have our first FAQ, and again, for everyone on the call and following along, there are a number of FAQs, and what we ask is that Andrea present a couple of slides at a time, and then she will pause and ask questions about the slides that are presented that she just talked about. So that's kind of the format and the flow. Andrea, take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Daniel. And I'm seeing there's already some questions popping up in the chat, and we will get to those. But first, I wanted to just start by reviewing some of the frequently asked questions that we've provided on our website. But I want to say before we go through that, I really want to thank each of the neighborhood association members who contacted me with your questions and needs. I've been hearing from folks for the past several weeks now. And these questions that are in the FAQ come directly from you all, from your emails and your calls to me, and also some of the questions that you asked of Commissioner Hardesty when she presented to the Sweeney board. So thank you so much for providing that foundation for responding and starting to do this transition. I also want to say thank you to you all for your patience and understanding. I know transitions are never easy, and it will take some time and also collaboration with you all to make this successful. Our responses will continue to evolve over time as we develop programming for Southwest neighborhoods together with you all. And so we'll be sure to provide updates in a variety of ways, but including in these FAQs as things progress in the coming months. So I'm going to start by going through some of these, the most frequently asked questions. And I'll go through several slides first, and then I'll pause and see if you all have any questions or comments or clarifications, and you can enter those into the comments, or excuse me, the chat box as well. And at the end, if we run out of time to cover your question for any reason, we'll be sure to follow up with responses. So the chat function is super helpful for us too, because we'll have a record of all the questions that were asked right there for us. So with that, I'm just going to dive right into the first few slides, starting with, just what was the intent of the ordinance, ordinance number 190321, which was the one that council passed on March 10th regarding Sweeney and Southwest Neighborhood Services. And Commissioner Hardesty's ordinance that was passed by council authorizes Civic Life to do basically two things. One, the ordinance allows us to hire 2 coordinator positions within Civic Life to directly support neighborhood associations in Southwest Portland. And then also it allows us to enter into a grant agreement with a nonprofit organization so that we can provide that liability insurance coverage for you all, for both neighborhood associations and place-based community groups in Southwest Portland. And I do know that there were several, I got a question from somebody about business associations that were previously covered with Sweeney Insurance. And yes, so as you can see, the ordinance is inclusive of not just neighborhood associations, but other types of organizations as well. So that's basically what the ordinance authorizes Civic Life to do. The next biggest question we really got was, what services will the city provide? And I have basically three different phases or 3 different buckets to share with you about that. One is thinking about, what do we need to do immediately within the first 100 days, which is basically between now and about the end of June. And we really have 4 focus areas. One is to connect with you all, the Southwest neighborhood leaders, which is one of the reasons why we're kicking off our engagement with you all with an open house tonight and earlier today. The second one is to work on that insurance coverage. So we'll need to launch a public request for proposals, like a competitive process, to select a qualified nonprofit organization to provide that liability insurance. So we will definitely be sharing that request for proposals for you all, and we'll need your support in spreading the word to organizations that you know and trust. The third is staffing support for this programming. So we will be starting the hiring process to hire the 2 coordinators so that they can deliver those services to you all. And I will talk more about that a little bit later, but the hiring process is basically what we'll be focusing on. And it does take the city on average about 100 days to go through the whole recruitment process. So that's part of the reason why we're thinking about this in terms of the first 100 days. And then the fourth priority is really connecting with you all more one-on-one. If you'll have me or other Civic Life staff at your neighborhood association meetings, we would love to talk further with you about your needs and get all the current updated contact information that we can. And so as Daniel said, after this meeting, you can feel free to send me an email directly with your next board meeting or neighborhood association meeting. But I'll also look for ways to reach out to you as well to figure out when the best time would be. So that's kind of the first 100 days. But meanwhile, and this has been the case since before the transition started, but Southwest neighborhood associations will continue to receive the same benefits as a city recognized entity. So that continues to be the case. So those things include continuing to be named in the Bureau directory, which is used by the city, other bureaus for public outreach. You'll continue to be placed on official maps and city information. You'll continue to receive notices by city agencies as required in city code. And in addition, you'll continue to receive support services and program offerings through the Office of Civic Life. And some of those things have included community safety, our community safety program. We have a Constructing Civic Dialogues program, which offers like diversity and equity and inclusion type trainings. Of course, graffiti removal, and among other things that we do on a regular basis. So that's just like a continuation of those types of benefits as a city recognized entity, which the neighborhood associations are. And then thinking about a little bit long-term past that first 100 days, once we can hire those coordinators, we will really get into the meat of the work to deliver services that you all have identified as priorities. And that priority identification will be evolving. It will be developing as we continue to hear from you. But some of the initial priorities we've heard directly from you all so far have included things like communication support, website, newsletter type stuff, organizational development and operations technical assistance. I saw some questions about bank accounts and things like that. We can address those in some future slides. Fiscal sponsorship issues, event support trainings, public records management retention, meeting space, and of course, connecting and collaborating with other city bureaus and organizations. So that's not a comprehensive list, but just wanted to show you some of the things that I've been kind of consistently hearing throughout the last few weeks. So that's kind of a brief summary of what kind of services the city will provide. But of course, as the coordinators come on board, you all will continue to shape sort of where we focus and based on what the needs are. So you can go to the next slide, Daniel. Actually, yeah, okay. So I'll go through this slide and then I'll pause here for questions. I guess the next natural question for you all will be, when will the new coordinators start? And I did previously say, as soon as July. And that might sound like a long ways out to people, but I do want to kind of explain a little bit about why that is. So in terms of Civic Life's authority to make the hire, basically the ordinance that was passed will take effect 30 days after its passage on March 10th. And so that means that we can post the position and start the hiring process. 30 days past March 10th is basically mid-April. So that's kind of our start time. In the meantime, we are doing all the behind the scenes stuff to get ready for that. So we're definitely not waiting, but that's kind of our time frame there. And then it does take, as I said, about 100 days from start to finish, the recruitment process, all the way to the offer and the final onboarding within the city. We'll be conducting an external and competitive hiring process together with the Bureau of Human Resources. And of course, as you know, the two coordinators will be employees of the Office of Community and Civic Life. Now, one additional thing I wanted to share, because I've received questions about, well, how will neighborhood leaders be engaged in that process? Well, we will be sharing a nominations sort of process for folks to come forward if they would like to serve on the selection committee. That will help sort of advise and provide feedback about the best candidates for those positions. And of course, there'll be some requirements. There's always a requirement at the city to take an anti-bias training, to have no conflicts of interest. And of course, we'll want people that can bring an equity lens to the selection process. So I just wanted to share that with y'all. I don't have more details beyond that. We need to work on sharing that with you all, but you will be hearing more about that shortly.
So Andrea, we have a two-part question, and I'll break this up. If you could respond simply, will there be a board structure for the Southwest neighborhoods? And maybe either Suk or Andrea or Kristen could respond to that, please.
A board structure as in like an advisory board?
So it sounds like there was a Sweeney board, like an executive board. Is there going to be some sort of board-like structure, like a comparable to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how I will answer this is that under the ONI standards, city-run district coalition offices usually have something called an advisory board, which is made up of community members in the region. It's not a board of directors, but rather an advisory board. Now, having said that, the ordinance that was passed by council doesn't necessarily direct the Office of Community and Civic Life to set up a city-run district coalition office. The ordinance directs us to hire 2 coordinators and provide services to Southwest neighborhoods. So it's not exactly apples to apples there. Can we create some kind of regular community engagement process or group? I imagine we can. But there is not really a formal board structure within sort of this setup. Rather, I would look at the advisory body type structure that is outlined in the ONI standards. I don't know if Suk or Kristen want to elaborate on that.
No, I think you covered it very well, Andrew.
Okay, thanks.
And Donna, I see your other question, and I know that there's a slide or two that addresses that one. So I'm going to hold that one for now, and then maybe we'll come back to it and see if we did address that question. I'm going to advance in the slides, Andrea.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, you already know this one. Who's our main contact right now? That is myself. And as you saw in the previous slides, it's not just me. You know, I am your main point of contact, but I'm working within a larger team within the Bureau. So just know I'm not alone. There's a team that I'm working with as well. You can go to the next slide. Okay, this was a big question that we got from a lot of folks. We know that the insurance coverage is a really important piece. And the short answer to the question, will neighborhood associations still get insurance coverage? And the short answer is yes. As you saw, the ordinance does authorize Civic Life to do this by through a request for proposals and partnering with a nonprofit organization. And the grant agreement is not to exceed 20,000. So it's kind of our top line budget for that kind of grant agreement. And our goal is to provide insurance as close to July 2021 as possible, because we know that that liability insurance was secured for neighborhood associations through the fiscal year 1920 grant to Sweeney, and that coverage extends to the end of June. And so we're gonna try our hardest to make sure that there's as little gap as possible between those time periods. So we're working on it, and we'll definitely be sending you and the public, you know, that request for proposals when it comes out. And the final thing is just say, we do have experience doing this through the city staff district coalition offices at East Portland and North Portland. And so we've got a little bit of, you know, we understand how it works in other parts of the city when this with city staff, you know, having to do this kind of grant agreement process. Next slide, Daniel. The other big question we got was about website support, because we know how important it is to post your upcoming board meetings and to announce that publicly so folks can attend and post your board minutes and all of that. So really quickly, I do know that some neighborhood associations are developing their own website. And if you do have that link, if you haven't already, please send it to me. And I'll work with our communications team, Daniel and Perla, to make sure that we link to it on our Civic Life website. You know, a side note is we are working on updating that information. We know a lot of it's outdated. We'll be going through a website migration to the Portland, the bigger Portland website. So we will be going through a little bit of transition there, but we do have like neighborhood specific pages on our current website. So we'd love to include your link there if you've got that. Now, we also understand that some groups really need more technical assistance and support for their websites. And so one of the things that we're doing is building into the position description of one of the coordinators' roles will be to include communications technical assistance, things like supporting with website, newsletter, and other communication support needs. At both our North Portland and East Portland offices, our staff help neighborhood associations, and we actually host a website that includes all the neighborhood associations in their regions. So we could do something similar if that is helpful. And then finally, the other thing we recognize is that there are costs associated with doing some of this communications work and other work that you're doing. And so once the new coordinators start, we will offer a process for applying for reimbursement for expenses that are related to communications and organizational expenses through something that we call the Community Activities Fund. This is a model that we use in East Portland. And it's, the spirit of it really is that we're supporting neighborhood associations and other volunteer-led organizations to conduct their civic engagement activities, right? To engage the community. And that means, doing meetings and doing events and, having Zoom accounts and renting space and, all those kinds of things. So, once the coordinators get up and running, we'll be in a position to be able to run a program like that. I can pause there and see if there are questions around.
There are questions, and I want to, because I'm a communications person and know the website, I can address one of those. One of the questions came from a Markham neighborhood representative. That question can be answered through the Community Activities Fund. And so as it relates to reimbursement, those can be requested through the Community Activities Fund. And I would like to offer Diane actually the floor to speak a little bit more about how the Community Activities Fund worked in East Portland and the North, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the Community Activities Fund is it's a system that's been working specifically at the East Portland Community Office for a couple years now. It was developed to streamline the process and make it as accessible and user-friendly as possible. So we have a relatively simple application, a very simple set of criteria to meet, and you would fill out the application and basically request either reimbursement for expenses that you have incurred, or you would request approval for upcoming expenses related to anything around your community activities. These funds are for any community activity that's basically pulled together or organized by a people who are not working or staff for the organization. So it's all volunteer activities, and it's relatively simple. And we try and make sure that basically groups are able to get resources that they need to keep civic engagement happening in their areas.
Thanks, Diane. And I see here in the chat that the question of Google Hangout and YouTube, I believe those are free tools, but you'll see here that for communication tools that require payment, such as Zoom, those are things that can be requested through the Community Activities Fund process. So I just wanted to connect those dots for those at home. Andrea, are you able to help respond to this question about rewriting bylaws and what your thoughts are on that?
Sure. Yeah, we actually didn't have a slide about that because I haven't received that question too often. But regarding each neighborhood association's bylaws, that is 100% your neighborhood association board's decision. Neighborhood associations are independent entities, and their board oversees the bylaws. And so, I haven't read your particular bylaws, but if there are things in there regarding how you're going to operate with Sweeney or things of that nature, and you are going to change how you operate or your relationship there, then you may want to do an update. But having not read your bylaws, it's hard for me to say whether or not you'll need to rewrite them. It is that board's decision. And it always is, a good idea to review bylaws and provide updates, as the years go by. So, up to you all. and also not a bad idea to take a look at them and make sure that they reflect how you are operating and how you would like to operate.
Andrea, and I think this question you can also address here in the chat. Do we have to give dates for any neighborhood activities and meetings for the coming fiscal year to be covered by the insurance plan?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that.
I would venture, I'm going to add, Andrea here, not at this time. You know, as Andrea shared, in our relationship at East and North, where we've been doing this for a long time, we don't require that. As we do the request for proposals and get the nonprofit partner, maybe there are some setup activities that we haven't done in quite a while, but that is not a process that we've had to do to renew our certificates of insurance with our nonprofit partners at East and North. So I would say at this point, not at this time, but maybe there are other reasons as we get our coordinators on board that we want to know about your neighborhood events and your activities, so that for other really great reasons to share and to amplify some of your community.
Thanks, that's a really good point.
I see one more question here in the Q&A section from Gary. Do each neighborhood association set up a new legal 501c nonprofit on their own, as we had done automatically by the Sweeney Neighborhood Association Coalition?
Okay, I think that question is just about if each neighborhood association needs to pursue being a 501c3. Okay, so again, I know it's not a very satisfying answer, but it is up to each neighborhood association to determine, what situation is best for you. There is, I do know a number of neighborhood associations have applied and have become 501c3 nonprofits themselves. However, that is not for everyone, right? It requires a certain level of capacity and a greater level of attention to detail with reporting and things like that. And so another route that neighborhood associations have taken, as I'm sure you're aware, is fiscal sponsorship, which many neighborhood associations have used Sweeney as a fiscal sponsor. And it's up to you about which path is best for you. And we have some slides later on about the fiscal sponsorship issue. But you can determine which nonprofit you would like to be your fiscal sponsor if that is the route you would prefer to take. You can work with any 501c3 nonprofit organization to have that kind of relationship. And we recommend generally, there's some great guidelines on the Nonprofit Association of Oregon that we've provided online. But essentially you're wanting to work with a nonprofit that you have a partnership with or a previous relationship with. Some organization that shares your values and mission is the ideal fiscal sponsor. And as a government entity, since we're not a 501c3, Civic Life is not able to be a fiscal sponsor. But what our staff will be able to do is talk with you through some of those options if that's what you need, and then think about what other options you might have in terms of other nonprofits that you have relationships with. I also think Nonprofit Association of Oregon has a directory on their website of some organizations that have offered that kind of service. But the short answer is, not every, it's your choice. It's not a requirement to be a 501c3, but it can help in certain circumstances. And more likely than not, what you'll need as a minimum is a fiscal sponsor in order to receive grants and that kind of thing, and to conduct your activities. So the next question was about, if this transition will affect land use appeals and notifications. In the short answer, there is no. It won't affect it. Things will continue as you've been experiencing it, because as I said earlier, the benefits of city recognition will continue to be maintained. And that includes things like, fee waivers on appeals and things like that. And that's through the Bureau of Development Services. But if you do have a update in terms of who your land use chair is or who your other contacts are, we will definitely need to update that information in the ONI database. The ONI database is where many of the bureaus pull their lists to do their outreach. And so we have a colleague, he's not here today with us, Marco Mejia, his email address is right there, but he's been supporting neighborhood associations to update their information in our database for a couple of years now. So you can go ahead and email him with your latest new chair or contact, and we'll make sure to get that updated as soon as possible. Daniel, do you want to go to the next slide?
Sorry. I think I have a bit of a lag on this end. Did it work on your end? What happens with fiscal sponsorships and bank accounts currently held by Sweeney?
Okay, yeah, this one we sort of just touched on, but some people ask more specifically about fiscal sponsorships and bank accounts held by Sweeney. And, you know, again, my answer is because it's regarding your own bank accounts and 501c3 nonprofit status and fiscal sponsorships, that unfortunately is not a role that local government can play since we're not a nonprofit. And so, you know, it is your decision. You can stay with Sweeney. I don't know what their plans are, but you'll just need to communicate with them about what they're able to continue to do and what they're not able to do. I don't know the answer with that, but you'll need to talk with them directly to do what you need to do with your bank accounts. And as I said earlier, as a city, our role is really only to provide neighborhood association support in connecting to other nonprofit partners or other information or resources regarding how to do this. And certainly I'm available to have those type of conversations. And when our Southwest coordinators come on board, they will also be available to provide more in-depth support with that. And as I said earlier, you know, yes, there are definitely neighborhood associations that have their own 501c3 statuses and manage their own bank accounts. But that, again, that might not be for everyone because it does require quite a bit of volunteer time from the board. So some things to consider as you're thinking about what's the best situation for your particular group. Another really popular question we received was if there will be a community-based office. And just to put it, you know, right up front is we completely understand why this is an important question. And in fact, we really do value having community space, physical space, where the community, you know, for the organization that is serving the community. In fact, you know, we have 2 city staffed offices that are located in the neighborhoods that they serve. And, you know, the longer answer is it's going to take us some time to look at this. You know, first we want to hire the coordinators, then we want to deliver the priority services as quickly as we can. And then we'll be able to explore options for a community-based presence. With the city being the entity that would lease such a space, there are several steps that we have to take, including council approval. So it is a process to do something like this. But in the meantime, you know, the coordinators, what they can do in the short interim period is help community members connect with existing meeting spaces. I know some of you all already have places you meet, like schools and such. And we're also happy to share any meeting type equipment that Civic Life already has and owns. And then again, you know, we got a question that was more specific to Sweeney and neighborhood associations using their mailing address or items stored at the Sweeney office. And again, the best way to get that answer is to contact Sweeney directly. I know a lot of you are part of the Sweeney board or are very connected to the leaders there, but if you do have trouble with facilitating things like this, please let me know and I can help mediate.
Great. Donna, I believe that Andrew just answered your question. And Frank, I see your question. I think we're going to get that a little bit later on in our presentation, if you don't mind. Thanks for holding.
So I know that folks often hold annual events, and we got a question about if events should be put on hold. And I think that really just depends on your neighborhood association's capacity to hold the event. If you require very little staff support from Civic Life, then and you can run it with your neighborhood association volunteers, then I don't see a reason that you need to put it on hold. But it might be helpful to know that Civic Life will have more capacity in July once we have the coordinators on board, and that they can provide a greater level of support for those types of events. And also, committee meetings and other types of meetings that you need support with. So again, in the meantime, it really is up to each neighborhood association if you think you need to delay an event. Thinking about the long-lasting impacts of COVID, it may make sense to, think about the fall or even the winter or even next year, given how slowly the vaccines are rolling out and how, slowly we are sort of convening in person. So you all already are aware of that, but just another factor to think about. And then I think this is one of our last slides here, but several people asked about the small grant program that Sweeney is continuing to carry out and that have already been awarded. And I just wanted to invite my colleague Shook to provide a response there, since he's kind of managing the small grants programs with the district coalition offices.
Yes, Andrea, thank you. As of last fiscal year, there's one outstanding program in small grants at the amount of about $9,500, which are dispersed among 5 different organizations. And because of COVID, we postponed and provided extension to Sweeney, and they will be finishing up this program by end of this fiscal year, which is June 30. And if you have any additional questions who are grantees, you should be contacting Janet Hawkins. She has been working with all the grantees individually. And if you have any concerns or any additional questions, please let me know. There are no any small grant funding program for this fiscal year, which started July 1 at 2020. The program I mentioned at $9,500 is from last fiscal year, and it was delayed because of COVID. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Daniel, I'm seeing some additional questions in here if you wouldn't mind helping me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the questions that we haven't addressed yet is from Frank. And Frank asks, will Civic Life facilitate an coalition of Southwest Portland neighborhood associations where the former member neighborhoods of Sweeney can communicate and share regional concerns?
I think that's a really wonderful idea. And, I think that's absolutely something that can be done. And we would love to work with you all to think about ways of convening, of bringing groups together. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful idea, and definitely something that we'll be more able to do once the coordinators start.
See, Frank, this is why I held your question for a long time. So very positive response there. I see a question from Donna, and the grant program was such a disappointment as the awards appeared to be based on personal relationships with those making the granting decisions. Does anyone want to comment on that?
I can try. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chuck, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, historically, that was again back in March 2020. Sweeney at that time provided descriptions of every grantee. And I believe that Sweeney was the one who did the RFP process. So I'm not aware of the details of your question, but I'll be happy to check with Janet. And again, currently this program is being implemented. Yes, and it's a good question. If there are any concerns, I can check for you on that and follow up with Janet. But if you reach out to me individually offline via email, I can provide you the descriptions of all each grantee's RFP and their program descriptions. Andrea?
Thanks. Now, I was just going to invite Suk if you would share kind of the future of the small grant program that we're referring to. I mean, I'm hearing Donna say, it was a disappointment, and we do want to let you know that we are rethinking the small grant program, and wanted to invite Suk to share more.
Sure, I'm not exactly reading Donna's question, and so I'll try my best, but maybe she's asking something different. So I'm not sure, Donna, if you're commenting on how the decisions were made by the Sweeney Committee that selected those small grants, in which case Shook, we don't, that was their process, so Shook will let us know. And then in terms of the small grants program in general, as Shook mentioned, in this budget year, we were asked to take an additional reduction in the fall. And so we are not doing small grants for this fiscal year. And we're actually not proposing to do the small grant program in the following fiscal year, primarily because the small grants program, even though each of the organizations and the work is really wonderful, it's such an administratively inefficient program. The $9,443, for example, that Sweeney administered, if you look at the actual cost of administering that relatively modest amount of money, it would be twice, maybe even 3 times that when you combine the Civic Life staff, all of the accounting staff, the Sweeney staff, and all of the other uncounted for volunteer hours to administer it. So we need to find better ways to support the really great volunteer and grassroots efforts of leaders, but in a way that's actually doesn't cost as much or more to actually implement it, because that's actually not a benefit for overall for taxpayers. So I think maybe there are a couple of questions in your statement, Donna. Let us know if we answered the right part of it. Okay, you agree with the.
Okay, great. Our next question is, what about the committee meetings such as land use, transportation, schools, parks, equity, public safety? What do we tell our committee chairs about going or not? Anyone want to respond to that?
I assume that you're referring to, I think Donna again, that you're referring to the Sweeney committee meetings. That's what I'm assuming you're referring to. It's really up to each neighborhood association to determine what kind of relationship they want to continue to have with Sweeney. As you know, they're their own nonprofit organization, independent of the city. The city's action to decide not to continue the grant agreement with them and to instead provide those services through coordinators at Civic Life, is a city decision, but each of your neighborhood associations can decide whether or not that is a productive place for you to continue to participate. When the coordinators come on board, we can also think about if there are committees that you need staff support for that make sense for you and that could help facilitate, as was said earlier, more communication and collaboration between the neighborhood associations in your area. So we are open to your ideas about how to do that, what that could look like, and what kind of staff support you might need to make that happen.
Great. I'm seeing a more specific question here. How do we move our money from Sweeney to a neighborhood account?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about fiscal sponsorships. Your neighborhood association, those are your dollars. So if you want to move your money out of Sweeney, you're going to have to talk to Sweeney about getting your dollars, transferring those dollars. You will likely need a fiscal sponsor, so another 501c3 nonprofit to serve as your fiscal sponsor like Sweeney did, or you would need to apply for a 501c3 status yourself. And as I said earlier, that is a process. So you should start thinking about, if that's what you want to do, you should start identifying another nonprofit organization that you may have a relationship with, that you would like to work with to manage your bank accounts.
And Andrea, I think you said that we have a nonprofit link on our FAQ where we were linking to a nonprofit.
Yeah, we do, and I can find it and put it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. That might be helpful. Thank you. Great. Is it possible that we're caught up in questions? Sook, anything, or Diane, or
The only question, Daniel, that I don't know if we directly address is again for Markham. Can neighborhoods or other organizations such as Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, NATS, join together for the nonprofit? And so that came in the middle. And so I think if you're asking, can groups come together to apply for the open competitive request for proposals to provide insurance? Yes, possibly. We haven't written the request for proposals yet. And so you would need to, so the eligibility requirements for those who are actually eligible to apply, you would need to examine that first after we've written them and released them. So if that was your question, Donna, then that's the answer for now. And just type in the chat if that wasn't clear, didn't actually answer your question.
Thanks for catching that, Seth. If I scrolled up a little bit further, I would have got that question, but I forgot to do that. Thanks for having my back there. We have a new question here. Applying for 501c3 costs in neighborhood of $500 or more, will Civic Life help with those costs or expertise to apply for it?
That kind of goes under what we were talking about with the Community Activities Fund. The Community Activities Fund is a reimbursement program that we run out of East Portland Community Office that we would like to start through the Southwest services when our coordinators start. And certainly costs like that we can include in thinking about what kind of expenses are eligible for that fund. You know, I'll just say, but one of the reasons why we do a reimbursement is because it is the least administratively heavy to conduct, right? And our goal with providing reimbursements is really to support communities in conducting their activities in civic engagement. And certainly sometimes that means organizational expenses. So we're definitely open to it. Like I said, it is a reimbursement type situation to do our best to reduce administrative burdens on volunteer run organizations like yourselves.
Can I also just mention, I'm glad to see somebody posting the cost. Last time I had checked, it was $600. So I'm glad to see that it's gone down to $500, but this is one of the things that I think neighborhood associations want to explore. So when Andrea says, you know, it can be tedious, it may be beyond some neighborhood groups' capacity to go through the process to maintain a 501c3 status. Yeah, it is work, and it is also costly. I think neighborhood associations do need to spend some time investigating what establishing 501c3 would entail if they want to take it on, if there's an easier way. And, you know, frankly, I think it is true that most neighborhood associations around the city have chosen fiscal sponsorship just because it's easier, and there are ways to partner and benefits to partnering with another organization. So yeah, just think about it, and then, you know, the CAF may be limited in terms of how much money we're able to distribute. And so you'll want to kind of prioritize which costs you want to have paid for.
Thanks, Diane. And just to let everybody know, I'm showing 6:56, and I know that some people may or may not have eaten dinner. And I know that people want to get on with other things. And again, this is not the last time that you're going to see us. Here are the emails for you to continuously ask follow-up questions. In addition to that, if you email Andrea, she does intend to meet with each and every neighborhood association in the coming weeks. And so she's looking forward to that. In addition to that, following tonight's open house, we will be uploading both of these recorded sessions onto our website so that you can reference this. In addition to that, I, as a communications person, will have more work in terms of expanding that FAQ for you. So I look forward to doing that with you. I'm going to read out loud a question that was posed in the chat here. It's from an anonymous attendee. City employees are not supposed to take position to try to influence a position a neighborhood association may desire to take during a monthly neighborhood meeting. The Sweeney staff and director maintains neutral position. Will ONI supervisors stay neutral and not pressure the two employer coordinators from pressing the ONI narrative on an issue? Who would like to take that question? So
I'll take that, Daniel. Yeah. Well, first of all, we don't, we used to be called ONI. Now we're called the Office of Community and Civic Life. But I say this, I sometimes slip back into to things I knew, then. So, but, and we say Civic Life for short instead of OCCL, just as another aside. Yes, our staff is here to support the community leadership. And also, so we will not be, and also it's prohibited from staff to be advocating for any kind of position on a policy. That's your work to do, and it's hard work and it's great work to do together. I will say though, our staff are responsible for upholding our city values. And our city values include everything from collaboration and communication and transparency to fiscal accountability, as well as equity and anti-racism. So will our staff exhibit and embody our city's values and our community's values? Absolutely. And then will we also help you in making in your decision-making, help you with trainings and education and access to other possible conversations so that you can have more equitable and deliberative decision-making? Yes, we'll help you do that as well. But that stops short of imposing any policy or other position on the community leaders who need to do the hard work for themselves and express their community values that are, in our case, where we meet together, that also must be aligned with citywide values as well. So hopefully we answered your question.
excellent. Thank you everyone for attending and coming tonight. It was our pleasure to be with you this evening. I got to watch a sunset while I was here, so that was a nice treat. Thank you all for attending. Again, this isn't the last time that you'll hear from us. Here are the emails. Please email Andrea your additional questions and also the best time to do those one-on-one meetings with your neighborhood association. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you so much and have a good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.